The nonpartisan New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute is finally annoyed me enough where I'm going to actually call them out directly.
The New England take.
I recently had Anna Brown from the Rudman Center at UNH Franklin Pierce School of Law on the show to talk about what the term nonpartisan means. Ultimately, it doesn't really mean anything. It means they're not directly affiliated with a specific party. The confusing thing with that for people that aren't necessarily able to keep up with all these organizations is most of them do have some form of policy agenda that they're looking to achieve. And what really bothers me, especially with left-wing oriented ones, there are many on the right that are guilty of this also, but left-wings especially tend to show that, come across like, oh, we're entirely outside of politics, we're above and beyond it, we have no way that we're trying to push the agenda or anything of that nature. The New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute is a left-wing organization ultimately that does exactly this. They are extraordinarily guilty of partisanship with all their policy, the things that they look to cover. I mean, a lot of things they look to cover are good and should be covered. But what they try and put forward when it comes to advice for the legislature and different things of that nature is entirely the dump money into the situation and that'll fix it, right? Because it's a very progressive, the political meaning of the term, progressive agenda topic. This is their solution to everything, is dump more money into the situation. I previously had Nicole Heller on the show, who's one of their analysts. It was more than a year ago. Dexter Tarbox and I had a very interesting conversation. It was fascinating. Basically, her only solution to the childcare crisis is we need to dump more money into it in order to make it cheaper for families to dump their kids in childcare. It completely goes against everything I believe. I think, which we'll dive in more when we start talking about wage gap, which is the straw that broke the camel's back for me when it comes to this. For starters, let's frame this. The New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute, their website's at nhfpi.org. As always, if you're looking for any more of the things I'm talking about, I always put everything in the episode description on YouTube. When you look on there about us, it's the mission is New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute promotes opportunity and economic well-being for all New Hampshire residents by producing and disseminating independent research and analysis to inform public policy. One immediate issue here, as someone who has kind of followed these guys for a couple of years now, they don't do the research. They just capitalize on research that already exists. They're using data that other organizations have created, whether it's the census, whether it's various surveys done by the many higher education institutes here in the Granite State. There's tons of different organizations they pull the data from, which is fine. But the way they kind of frame themselves is like these data experts and using independent, or they specifically say they're producing, they're not producing, they are disseminating, and they are analyzing. So I think that's a tremendously different thing, personally. I'm not the biggest data dork in the world. Don't confuse me as someone who really is as an economic expert or anything of that nature. But the way they phrase themselves in this way really comes across like they're doing the research, they're putting together the data when they're analyzing the data, which is fine. But you're more of a journalist. It's like this. The weird thing when it comes to this institute is they offer opinions and analysis of existing data, which is something investigative journalists used to do back in the day, which is why I think a lot of media outlets nowadays really kiss their ass, is because they don't have people that can do this anymore. They don't have the staff of journalists that they used to have back in the day. And they rely on these guys. They rely on the Granite State Media Collaborative. For better or worse, when it comes to their agenda, they need people that can do this. And I think in a vacuum, it's fantastic work. I think the Granite State Media Collaborative does really important work that needs to get out there. I don't always necessarily agree with the tone or the angle that they're looking at reporting on, but it's important that people are at least doing this sort of stuff. But when they specifically do all this, as a counterpoint, I will point out what the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy has as on the opposite side. They literally have on their about page, the Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy is the only organization grown in the rocky soil of the Granite State Awesome. Whose mission is to develop and advance practical free market policies that promote prosperity and opportunity for all. These are all right-wing libertarian dog whistles. This is what they're doing. Drew Klein and them do great work, and they are specifically liberty-leaning, conservative, libertarian sort of agenda that they're looking to accomplish. They literally put there. When you go to the New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute, there's nothing there that kind of frames where they're going with it. And then they proceed to just put out all these different things where they code it enough where it comes across like, oh, they're just presenting the data, they're analyzing the data, but all their outcomes they're looking to do and what specifically they're hitting almost always ends up going along the lines of we need to dump more money at the problem, the Democrats have the solutions, the Republicans are the enemy, and it's the opposite of what should be happening. I mean, a big example is Gene Martin is their executive director over there. I had him on the show when he first started because I wanted to kind of get on the ground floor, see what these guys are going to be doing going forward. Little did I know what would be happening ultimately. I mean, maybe I'm an idiot for assuming it would go a different way, but I think you go on to NewHampshireBulletin.com. I'll post a link to his author page down there because he does put out commentary pieces. Investments in child care will be key to Granite State's economic future. You go in there, it comes down to subsidies and other things for the government to fund government solutions. Housing crisis is harming New Hampshire's economy and its communities. The government should be subsidizing more and dumping more money into housing programs, which maybe that's the case. Maybe we need to have some of that to fix the housing situation. But a lot of it comes down to NIMBYism and zoning issues. It doesn't necessarily, we can dump as much money as we want to the program. It doesn't mean there's going to be affordable housing on the other side. But Granite State investments in public education are key to prosperous, inclusive future. I don't even need to go beyond the headline for that. He literally puts it right there. A healthier Granite State means a healthier Granite State economy, which I'm not even going to bother. Let's see. Let's look at just the top of the headline. Beyond the formalized healthcare system in New Hampshire, the health of Granite Staters is influenced by and has an impact on many population-level and individual factors. Social determinants of health are defined by, quote, the conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age that affect a wide range of health risks, unquote. I don't even have to go any deeper than that. It's in his latest one that's on here, it's old. It's from October 18th, 2023. Down in this article a little bit, he literally says, when I say fiscal policy, I'm referring to policymakers' decisions of which types of programs the government invests in and to what extent those policy interventions better the lives of residents and result in economic security for all. So once again, we're dumping more money from the government into various things. I mean, I don't understand how this is the only solutions that Democrats and progressives and people of the left are willing to do. There's so many other things that can do. And it doesn't even have to be things that that calm my libertarian heart where I want less just government intervention. It's a matter of changing around laws sometimes, fixing zoning policy, removing barriers, changing where the consumer protection is pointing to make sure it's going to the right thing. There's all sorts of other ways that you can fix government policy that don't just mean I'm just going to throw money and add more bureaucracy and regulation to a program. There are so many other ways we can fix issues, and we talk about them here on the show all the time. I go on to a totally different tangent when it comes to this, but this, like I was talking about earlier, his new analysis highlights pay gap disparities in New Hampshire ahead of National Women's Equal Pay Day. And furthermore on that, as we approach National Women's Equal Pay Day on March 25th, New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute's Jessica Williams, who's newer over there, and Nicole Heller, who I had on the show shortly after she got started at the Institute, released new analysis revealing troubling pay disparities for women in New Hampshire. So as I dive into this blog post that they have on their site, think about the implications of the way they're phrasing it. Because I literally posted a comment on a 6-minute webinar that no one watched. So I pulled up the stats on the webinar. 2 people attended, me and some other person, and it received 2 likes and 1 comment. That 1 comment was from me asking, why are you phrasing in this way, and received no response. So it's a bunch of BS. They do a good job. job at playing that they're bigger than they are. Just all the power to them for that. But so going specific with their equal pay day thing here, so the first bullet in here is Granite State women earn 76% of what New Hampshire men were paid. Now, when you phrase it that way, it really comes across as they're being discriminated against. There is very little evidence of widespread pay discrimination across the country. There are a huge amount of factors that come down to it. And I'm going to post a little clip from Shoe on Head right here.
The wage gap is simply the average earnings of men and women working full-time. It does not count for different job positions, hours worked, or different jobs. It has nothing to do with the same job. It has nothing to do with discrimination.
It comes down to a lot more than just they make less. I mean, the type of career women go into, whether they go, like, we saw a lot with the federal government downsizing, how it was a ton of bachelor, at least educated black women were disproportionately employed by the federal government. Well, if that's the case, you're most likely not going to make as much money. If you're in public service, whether it's federal, state level, in theory, you're not going to make as much money as you would working for a private organization that is looking to make income. When you look at, so specifically in here, one of the industries that's brought up at least once is the huge pay gap between women that are in the legal industry, which is 114,000 versus 61,000. Disproportionately, it's going to be men that are going to be going into executive level lawyer positions in industries, specifically whether it's intellectual property, whether it's technology, and things of that nature. These are very high-paying industries. Women disproportionately tend to go into more like your public defenders, the state service sort of positions, again, family law, and things of that nature. These are lower paying positions where you're barely able to pay off your student loans. It is rough. And also, when you're looking at these are also averages. These are not, you're most likely going to make this much, as they're including the lawyers that are making millions of dollars every year in their career is offsetting the men that are in these public defender, these public service-oriented positions. So it's going to be a huge offset. And arts, entertainment, sports, and media occupations, 100,000 versus 62,000. Like, what does that even friggin' mean? Does this mean there's disproportionate amount of women that are doing seasonal and part-time jobs because they have a family or things of that nature? Who the hell knows? In management positions, once again, there's so many factors. I wouldn't say once again necessarily in this. I mean, the impact of women have babies. Babies come out of them, and there is a huge health factor when it comes to that. That does have an impact on career. When the said baby does come out, you like that? Yeah, we're doing that more. They want to hold said baby, and they don't want to give them to some institution to raise them for them. That is hugely valuable for young children to have either a mother or father there raising them instead of them being dumped in daycare. This is the thing where I got into it with Nicole Heller when she was originally on the show, is I said, well, wouldn't it be better if we paid one of the parents more so that they can afford to, one of them could stay home and raise their child? And she said, well, that's not viable nowadays, I don't think. I'm like, well, let's make it viable. Shouldn't that be our job? They're so focused on dumping money from government programs into the private industries and such that they're not considering, like, maybe there's other solutions. Once again, like I keep saying, maybe the better solution is we try and figure out a way to have housing less expensive by reducing zoning laws and making it easier for workforce housing to be able to be built that isn't necessarily huge tenement-style apartment buildings. Labor force participation rate for Granite State women is 83.3%. It's the headlines in the content. Based on preliminary data from 24, the labor force participation rate among Granite State women ages 25 to 54 is 83.3%, around 7.8% percentage points lower than the rate for men of the same age, which is 91%. Once again, what do women tend to do between the ages of 25 and 40 for the initial baby? But going past that till they're in their 50s when their kid is finally out of the house, or kids plural. they're most likely wanting to focus on with their kids. That's a normal thing. That disproportionately, using their phraseology here, women are more likely to want to do that, to want to have that opportunity. It is not a bad thing that labor force participation rate inherently is lower for women. It is not inherently a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, they do bring up later on that this does cause an issue with having health insurance and retirement benefits, but that's the importance of having a two-parent household, which disproportionately or proportionally, I don't know which way they want to do it. I don't know what they mean by when they say this half the time, because I think there is intent behind the way they phrase it that way. But overall, the data shows a two-parent family is almost always going to have better outcomes versus a one-parent household. And you think about what you're offering your kid by having at least one of the parents there as much as possible. Yeah, I mean, part-time jobs and things of that nature. But if we can get at least one of the two parents to be able to make more and provide good benefits and things of that nature, it's going to be hugely beneficial to that family, more than making sure that the women also get dumped in the workforce. Like, that is... I hate to see it. It sounds evil to me that we want to force women to work at the same percentage as men, and they just keep phrasing things like of color, even with people of color. Women are overrepresented in low-wage caregiving roles. Pay gaps by gender and race may exist for a variety of reasons, including the higher likelihood of women and people of color engage in unpaid or low-paying caregiver jobs. Disproportionately here in New Hampshire, we're a white state. Like, that's just the nature of it. So as more populations move in that are minority classes, they may not be coming from a background of high income. They might be coming in fresh out of school and things like that and taking advantage of career opportunities that are here in the state. They're going to make less money because they're coming in here clean, fresh, and not necessarily bringing over a high-paying career or background. We've had a tremendous amount of increase of population in the state of New Hampshire since COVID, as people fled blue states, New York, Massachusetts, things of that nature. As more and more of that happens, they may be starting entry-level positions, so they're going to make less money. It doesn't mean they're being discriminated against. It also doesn't mean that we're going to have equity. Equity is not the solution. Equal opportunity is the solution. Equity is thrown all over the place when you visit the Fiscal Policy Institute site. They 100%, which is a very progressive thing. They want equity across the board, and that is never going to happen. The wage gap is entirely an equity problem. They think women should be making just as much money when they're not necessarily going to make as much money based on their career path they're going to have in life. Some men are going to they work more dangerous jobs that pay more money, but women have no interest in going into that. Should they be told, hey, you're going to make less money in order to equal the stakes here? No. You see women that are working in construction, per individual salary, women there are disproportionately making more money in that field because they're not necessarily working the jobs in the field, they're working the office jobs. They're managing companies and things like that. So what should we do about that? Like, should we be making the men make more money to compensate? Is that what Democrats want? No. Of course they don't want that to happen. That is not the goal. The New Hampshire Fiscal Policy Institute's been pissing me off for a while. I don't even bother reaching out for interviews with them anymore because I don't trust necessarily the implications of things they put out there. It is a serious problem. I really wish they would not be the only point of reference for many journalists in the state. I wish they would. There would be more players in the game. There just aren't that many because it's too expensive. Like I said, these guys, you're people that are very highly educated that have to go through a lot of data. That is very specialized. Good for them for having that ability. I disagree with the mission of what they're doing and the fact they hide that they are a left-wing partisan organization, even though they are nonpartisan. NewEnglandTake.com. Please be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. We're on X, Facebook, LinkedIn. I post everything on all those outlets also. Please be sure to share. It goes a long way. We're also every week posting, having an episode posted to the Granite Grok. Big thanks to Steve over there for getting the show up there. It's hopefully a few more people are able to check out the show that way. They may not have found us just on X and such. But talk to you soon.